Okay, welcome to Unit 5, Lecture 7. Last time we talked about what happens when brainwashing, socialization doesn't work. And the idea is that you can act in ways that are against society's expectations. That type of behavior is called deviance. In this video, all I want to do is show a typology. It's actually from a sociologist named Merton, Robert Merton. That is his typology of deviance. And it's based on ideas that we were talking about last time in terms of accepting or rejecting society's goals from our culture, which is on this axis right here. Accept society's goals or reject society's goals. And up here on this axis is accepting society's means for achieving goals and rejecting society's means for achieving goals. Now, each of these cells then is, in this cell, would be somebody who accepts society's goals and also accepts society's means. You can tell in this case, somebody who does this is not deviant in any way. They are completely accepting. This is all of us most of the time. This is what we would call conformity. My little drawing that I do most of the time, when I'm not doing this one, is a drawing of conformity. People who step into society, they understand it according to its culture. They understand the world according to its culture. They see its norms and statuses, and then they conform. That's us most of the time. But there are, and so that's important to understand, is that I would say, if you were to count all of the behaviors that all of the people in our country do over the course of a day, the vast, vast majority, probably along the order of 99% of human behavior within a society probably exists here in conformity. That is not necessarily horrible. Don't get down on yourself about it, although hopefully we will see that there are times when deviance is probably the reasonable reaction to circumstances. But what I want to do by throwing out 99% for this cell, I want to make sure it's clear. It looks like all of these are equal, but the reality is this is just the different sort of behaviors that can be exhibited. It's not meant to imply equality. Okay, a person who accepts society's goals but rejects society's means for achieving those goals. We talked about that last time in terms of like a drug dealer. This is, according to Robert Merton, he defines people here as innovators. So this cell would be innovation. A drug dealer, this isn't, I'm trying to turn you into drug dealers or glorify drug dealers, but what a drug dealer is doing is basically looking at society saying, yeah, I get it, but I'm going to do something different than what everybody else is doing in order to try to get to those socially approved goals. A drug dealer fits here, but you know who else fits here is Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg invents Facebook. Facebook does not exist. A social media platform like that doesn't exist. And you can make your own Facebook drug addiction joke you can email me that. But for right now, what I want to draw your attention to is both a drug dealer and Mark Zuckerberg are accepting society's goals. I want to attain a degree of material wealth. That's what our society tells me I'm supposed to do. But I'm looking at the social institutions that would allow me to get there. In the case of a drug dealer, it might be I don't feel like I would have a reasonable shot at those things because I dropped out of high school, or because I don't enjoy school, or because I don't feel like I could take orders from somebody else, and therefore I innovate. I create my own path toward those goals. Mark Zuckerberg doing the same thing. He looks at the world and says, well, I could get a job working for somebody else, or I could invent this new thing that didn't exist. And in that case, he is rejecting the societal means of achieving society's goals. He is an innovator. Okay, so let's fill in the other two. You could be a person who rejects society's goals, but accepts society's means of achieving them. In this case, this is like a person who says, yeah, the machine is set up for me to not win, but what are you going to do? And just goes through life, basically kind of giving up, but still going through the motions. What Robert Merton termed this as was ritualism. You go through the ritual of getting up and going to work, but you don't believe that it's really going to make a difference. People who have given up fit here. And I don't say that, just saying that because of the collective consciousness we have makes it sound like I'm trying to be insulting. I'm not. That is a reasonable reaction to a society that increasingly doesn't have social mobility. These people are going through the motions of putting food on the table for their kids. They don't like their job. They don't necessarily see hope for a better life, and just kind of do your thing. Ritualism. The last cell, and this is it's moderately more complicated than the other two because there are two ways you can fit in this. Reject society's goals and reject society's means. Basically saying, this whole machine doesn't work for me. And if you think about that, there are a couple of types of people who could fit that. The first one is what Robert Merton calls retreatists. Hippies in the 1960s who dropped out of society and went and started communes in Colorado. Retreatism. It's not good or bad. It's just saying, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm out. That's it for retreatism. You're retreating away from society. The other one is a person who says, you know what, this isn't working for me, and it sucks for a whole bunch of people, and you know what, let's break it and put it back together in a different way that does work for everybody else. The most famous person in this situation is actually a guy from our syllabus, Karl Marx, who advocated in the Communist Manifesto for the wholesale rebellion against industrial society. He said, this isn't working for everybody except the rich people, so let's tear it down. The term, and this is not meant as an endorsement of Marxism or anything like that, it's just he fits here. Under Robert Merton's idea of rebellion. And that's our typology of deviance. 4 different types of deviance. Now, importantly, there are rich classes that you can take on deviance that you've not gotten 1% of deviance here. All this is doing is describing behavior. It's not saying what is motivating people to behave in certain ways. And there is a lot of different research. It's actually it's a fascinating field because some types of innovation might be caused by one set of circumstances and another set of type of innovation caused by other circumstances. So the field of deviance is pretty rich with regard to that. All we're doing is describing behaviors, and we're saying, well, conformity would get there by a person going straight through the machine. Ritualism would get there by somebody saying, you know what, I don't buy these goals, but I'm going to go through the social institutions anyway. Innovation, somebody who buys the goals but dips out into a different alternative means. And retreatism and rebellion, somebody who's skipping the machine altogether. What I want to draw your attention to, and where we're going to go for, I believe, let me scroll down on my script, but where I believe for the rest of the Unit 5 is into the idea that 2 of these, and only 2 of them, can lead to something beyond themselves. Innovation and rebellion. Because rebellion, even rebellion is slightly different than Retreatism with regard to this. Rebellion happens in the context of all the other people who are still taking part in the machine. Innovation and rebellion create the possibility of social change. And social change is something I'm going to define for you, I believe, in the next video. But what's important for you to understand is what we're talking about, to take you back into the beginning context of this entire course. This course is about how the real world works. And when we talk about social change, what we're talking about is changing the real world, changing that water that we're all swimming in, the circumstances in which we live out our lives. And what I'm saying to you is that it's not here right now. The machine that I usually draw up there has been presented as this reasonably, this very powerful producer of thoughts and behaviors. The reality is, it is changeable. And we've seen that with regard to how America has changed from being a by law white supremacist country to a society that isn't that way anymore. That happens because of deviance. These two types of deviance in particular. So what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the semester is ways in which deviance can lead to social change. So I'll see you in the next video, and we'll begin talking about that.